Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I decided to draw a pretzel. I just felt like taking a bit of a break from my La Brea Tar Pits fossil series and really just wanted to do something different, use different colors, though I did end up using a lot of browns, which I tend to use all the time anyway, but that doesn't matter, that's fine. We just, you know what, we wanted something, at least a different shape. But yeah, so I'm starting off with, well, a sketch, and I did sketch this directly onto the Bristol board, so it's a little messier than my traced over ones, and then I decided to go over with colored pencil once I lightened up the graphite, and then try to get rid of some of the extra graphite since it was a bit rougher of a sketch than usual. Then I went in with the Copic Y000 because this is a little bit yellowy in tone, like the lighter bits are, and then the toastier bits, like most of the crust, they're quite warm, so I wanted to make sure the lighter bits did show up a little more yellowy. And then I went over with the Copic E50, which is relatively light still, but a little pinkier, a little warmer. And I just did what I usually do. I went from light to dark. This time I did pay close attention to the texture. Not that I don't usually pay attention, but this texture is a little different from what I'm used to. So pretzel texture is, firstly, it's quite toasted, you know what I mean? Like crispy, crunchy, but also because it's a yeasty dough, you get quite a lot of like air bubbles that are visible, especially in like the cracked open areas, but then also the way it toasts. So if there's little divots from the air bubbles or little bits sticking up, then you can still see the sort of dots, I guess, after it's been toasted. And I wanted to make sure you could see that as I was coloring it in, so I did, I don't know, they seem like pretty abstract shapes, but I tried not to keep anything too smooth. That would just look a little too unrealistic. Not that this was supposed to be hyperrealism or anything, but it would look more like a cartoon than what I wanted. So that's what I was doing. If you see me going in like circular kind of motions, that's why. And I don't know why I made the decision to do this, but I originally thought when it came to the salt, I would just add it later, because why would I torture myself and try to go around all those little tiny dots the entire time? But then I just started going around them. So I'm kind of glad I did it in the end because I liked how it turned out, but that was kind of the worst part about this. It wasn't that bad. It could have been a lot worse. It wasn't that bad at all, actually, especially because it wasn't like tiny bits of salt covering the entire thing. It was just, towards the bottom, there was definitely more, but yeah, it was okay in the end. And so, actually towards the end, you'll see what I do. I do go back in over a lot of them and add white or lighter colored pencil, but you'll see that in a bit. I am glad I preserved the lightest bits though, so I could actually remember or like find what I was doing, because I didn't want to outline them too darkly. I actually didn't use the colored pencil on the salt, just on the outsides. And this isn't the final bit of colored pencil either, it's just so I don't lose my lines as I get darker and darker. But yeah, you can see I'm going in lighter color to darker color and then blending certain bits in between, keeping some hard edges but not that many in the beginning. And I started off blending with the E50, and then as I get to the darker colors, I do choose a darker color to blend with, just so that I can avoid lifting too much color, because if you lift with a really light color, it'll like lighten it quite a lot. It'll like lift up a lot of the pigment. So I did eventually start blending out with a darker color. Yeah, I was just trying to keep like this kind of brown warmer. So I don't know, it's not quite as red as the reference picture. And actually, I like in the end how this came out looking kind of light. It almost looks like watercolor. And I think really the reason I did it that way and I didn't add like more and more darker colors is because the only time I've done like a bread / bakery set is my Bougie Bakery series. And I did that with watercolor pencil, and not even good watercolor pencils, the cheapest Faber-Castell ones for like kids. And so they have kind of like a washed out, I don't want to say washed out, but like, watercolor feel compared to like really vibrant art that you can make with alcohol ink or alcohol markers. And so while I was tempted to keep going darker, I didn't, and I like the vibe. I think it's chill. It's cool. So that's what I ended up doing. Little by little, going over, like, slightly going over the lighter bits a little bit at a time, and trying to get out that texture. Like, for example, in that middle part of the pretzel, the one that goes towards the right, it kind of looks like lines, like you can see where it kind of bunched up a little bit, maybe as they were shaping out the dough, or as it expanded. And I wanted to capture that texture so it looks, like a real pretzel. And I think this is the third to darkest color. We're about to get into the darkest ones. So for the two darkest colors, I basically held them both in my hand and just grabbed one at a time and switched back and forth. So not like what I usually do, where I would put the lighter color first and the darker color on top and then blend out. Sometimes I would put the darker color first and then blend over on top of it with the lighter color and extend that out as well, just to get a smoother blend, so that when I wanted the really deep parts, like the really dark spots, the angular bits, those would stand out more if I put those on top, if that makes sense. So I wanted a mix of blends and like lightening up the darkest part, because if I put the second darkest color over the darkest color, it looks a little lighter before it dries, obviously. And then once that dries a bit and I put the darkest color on top to do like a little ridge or a dent or something, then it shows up a lot better. So that's kind of what the last bit here of the marker was like. Sometimes I did the darkest one first, sometimes the lighter one first, and just sort of bringing out any of those like deeper shadows or lines, kind of the occlusions where light doesn't really hit. There was no place that was particularly that was not like super black. So and also, like I said, I tried to avoid going too dark because I wanted that sort of watercolory feel. I was liking how it was looking, basically. And because I was going from light to dark, I was like, maybe I shouldn't keep going. Maybe I should hold back a little bit. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I think it came out all right. I like the vibes. I like the texture. And I did end up going in with more colored pencil, as I usually do, and that'll come up momentarily. I did want to make sure I darkened up some bits though, so that was like my third lightest color just then, and I added a few more darker patches. And so yeah, I couldn't decide what color pencil to use. When I use like the most similar color to like the darkest shadow, it wasn't really standing out enough. And so I ended up going with the, the dark umber. So it's not black, and it doesn't show up that dark anyway because I didn't push super hard, but it was just enough to make it look a bit 3D. And I used it to add, like a few more bits on the inside as well, like divots, and darkening up some shadows, but not going overboard. That's why I decided to do it with the colored pencil, because I didn't want to go overboard with the markers and like darken up too much. And then I went in with like a reddish brown as well, but it didn't really do much. So I kind of gave up on that and just went back to the dark umber. And then right after this, I grab my, these are Arctics, by the way, Arctics colored pencils. I grabbed a lighter yellow and tried to do some basically dots, because you could see, again, because the texture of the yeast, like expanding, making bubbles, makes it bake. Like when it, I don't know how to explain it. When it bakes, you can see kind of dots, right? So I went in first in the darkest bits with that yellow, and then I went in with the Holbein white so it was visible in the lighter bits, and then I also brought out some of the salt as well with that Holbein white. And when that didn't feel like quite enough for some bits, like especially because I went a little too thick with the colored pencil because it wasn't sharpened quite enough, I went in with the Copic Acrea. Finally not dried out. I turned it upside down and waited like a week, and now it's not dried out. And I took away some of those darkest bits and brought out the ultimate highlights, like the white bits. Very sparingly. Very sparingly. I don't want it shiny. I just want, well, kind of shiny because there's an egg wash on it, right? But like I wanted to just bring out what was supposed to be standing out the most. And then that was it. Let me know what you think. Give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more like this in the future. We'll do a quick close-up. Again, I love that it looks like watercolor here. Let me know if you agree. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!